So speaking of at Proto, and building on this topic, it's interesting. So like Git is already decentralized in a meaningful way. And at Proto is decentralized in a meaningful way. So do you marry the two in a way that is intuitive?
I mean, I can talk about a bit about this. I mean, we've thought long and hard about, the fact that we are dealing with two protocols. There's like the Git, backing for the repositories, which is like hyper optimized for handling diffs and, like flowering of repositories and like compressing, sort of snapshotting repositories as the commits grow. And then there's 80 protocol, which is also building this Merkle DAG and then for like verifiable records, people can like authenticated records, right? Um, and then we have these two things and we want to marry them. Surely there's like a unified interface for this, right? Surely we can sort of store repositories, using the 80 protocol Merkle DAG or, the other way, store 80 protocol records using the Git trees. Um, but truthfully, I mean, they've sort of, I think Git has evolved a lot in these sort of 25 years that it's been around. Um, and it's a behemoth. It's quite hard to even like wrap my head around the model. And it's also very extremely focused on specifically evolving code bases, like adding text-based diffs and stuff. Um, so we thought a lot about this and we realized we should just keep it separate. Like, we have these PDF things and then we have Git repository things. And I think maybe if we sort of sat around and then as a research project over years and years, we could build a way for Git repositories, or rather to build a version control system on 80 protocol, and then we could maybe share, the underlying advantages that 80 protocol brings, or alternatively build a PDS which uses Git as a backing, right?
Yeah.
Backing for storage. I think we could do, but I think the very simplest solution is to just keep them separate. Um, Let Git repositories be Git repositories, let PDS repository be PDS repositories, and we'll sort of advance this. Currently, the sort of like deep integration does not exist. Repositories aren't exactly stored on the PDS. We do create a record for repositories, but it's not like what you expect from 80 protocol is that you can verify, like we used to have the contents of a record and it's like inherently verifiable. But currently that's not possible because the Git repository is separate from the 80 protocol record for the repository. But we have some ideas to sort of like connect the dots here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For now, yeah, I can probably expand on that. So I think for now, all the social bits, like your pull requests, your issues, your comments on all of those, in fact, the pull request diffs, the patch diffs, and of course the repository metadata, stars, follows, yeah, all of that is on protocol. So all of that is written directly to your user's PDS. And, so we're using 80 protocol through and through for that. But yeah, and then that's where we sort of introduced when Akshay said, let's keep Git repositories separate, then we sort of had to think of, how do we keep it separate? And if it's separate, how can we sort of arrive at that vision of, that, you can self-host it and still have others contribute. And that's where we came up with the idea of knots, like KNOTS, knots. And knots are like these super lightweight, lightweight Git repository like servers in a way. And all they do is they're completely headless. There's no UI. It's just like a REST API that serves your Git repository, and it's then picked up by us, the app view, and we then display it. So this effectively allows for like a network of these federated knots to run, and there's a unified view into this this federated set of Git repositories that can live anywhere and everywhere. And of course, the forking and pull requests, etc., all work across knots, facilitated by 80 protocol and the app view.
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of chatter about um, like apps using 80 protocol. So everything that uses 80 protocol eventually looks like social media, right? So what if you're building things which are not entirely social media? Like how do you And in which case you just use AD protocol for the social bits, and you just enable the sort of
Yes.
social bits of your application with AD protocol, but then don't sort of try to shoehorn AD protocol to the other things,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's worked quite well for us. Also because, like Git is huge. There's a lot of tooling. There's a lot of things that's been built for Git in the last so many years. We don't want to deconstruct that and then, like switch to like a PDS-based version control system. And also like Git is fundamentally multiple people contributing on this one repository, but PDS is sort of like personal data stores, right? You'd want to, currently only one user can edit a record on a PDS, or rather on their PDS repository. And fundamentally, I mean, maybe there's a solution here where we sort of have a deep integration. It's just not something that we're sort of looking at right now.
Something that we've talked to other folks building on the App Proto about is, so the App Proto has this idea of a lexicon, which is like a custom data structure for your
Yeah.
app that's built on App Proto. And Blue Sky has their own lexicon. So if you write data in the Blue Sky lexicon, it'll show up on Blue Sky. If you write data in a different lexicon, you have to have an app view for it to display. There's this interesting like tension between when do you make something show up in the Blue Sky lexicon versus like when do you use your own custom lexicon, and sort of as y'all have been thinking about like social, one of the things that popped in my head that I've never thought about before is like notification systems are always super hard to make. And it's interesting that you have this like option to sort of like hijack Blue Sky in a way to like be sort of a notification system. It's like, oh, if you wanted to, it's like you could have a Blue Sky post every time you created a new Tangled repo or whatever. That'd be like a very simple thing for y'all to do under the hood. It'd be like, it's almost like a choose your own, like how you want to be notified or like how public you want it to be. Like what are the network effects and where does it impact?
That's true. No, I think we even had this conversation earlier, like even on Blue Sky actually, about people wanting to either retain their Blue Sky follows or us on Tangle building an entirely new follow graph. Like, because we could, of course, we could have just, had your Blue Sky follows automatically imported on Tangle, but then we felt like that would probably be not a great fit because again, Tangled is not looking to be a Blue Sky compatible, or like it's not a social app, right? It's a social enabled app, and I think that sort of distinction is where where we sort of figured that okay, you know what, we should probably build our own follow graph where you follow people who you want to see their code activity for, not you don't follow someone on Blue Sky and have the exact same people on Tangled, because that doesn't make sense. It's not a one-to-one, right? So so that's sort of another interesting thing about AD protocol, right? Because I think after a point you'll only see a certain number of these social apps, because you can't have, I mean, there's an inherent limitation to how many social apps people are going to start using. Sure, you have TikTok, you have Instagram, now you have Twitter, all shaped in AD protocol, versions of them. But that's about it. Like, what else are you going to make? Everything else has to sort of build its own little space. And I think, fundamentally AD protocol enables this, and that's great. But I think that mix and match is also pretty cool. But ramble.
A lot of chatter about like whether new social apps built on AD Pro should share network graphs or not.
Yeah.
And I mean, I like under it says maybe in your view, maybe like, your Tangled follows are, like you follow different people entirely on Tangled versus different people on Blue Sky. I personally, I mean, I feel like the engineers I follow on Blue Sky are the same people I want to follow on Tangled. I want to see the same code. So I don't know that there's a good answer to this. I know that Spark, the TikTok clone, they're sort of having an option where you can import the same follows on Blue Sky.
Yeah.
And then when you start having options like this, like import from the other network and then share to this other network, I feel like users might tend to get confused. So I don't know that there's a clear answer here. I personally want to keep my 100 or so Blue Sky follows on Tangled also.